here's one of the biggest promises in the big book. It says, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Now, why is that a promise? Because if my problems are of everybody else's making, the only way I'm ever going to be okay is if I can get everybody else to act right.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of our dear departed friend, Mr. Charlie P., that you heard at the beginning of this episode, and you are going to hear so much more from him in just a second. But first things first, this here episode is brought to you by Mary Lynn, Christina, Laura, Tim, and Brad. And so you wonder, you say to yourself, what exactly did Mary Lynn, Christina, Laura, Tim, and Brad do? Well, they went by our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com, maintained by the one and only, the lovely Mrs. M. Anyway, they went by there and they clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Mary Lynn, Christina, Laura, Tim, and Brad. This here episode is coming right out to Ewans. So I'm just kind of giggling to myself because, well, I do this kind of like little routine before I record an episode. I put my arms up in the air and I just kind of try to get in touch with the Spirit, God, the God of my understanding for a moment and just kind of get centered. And then I did all that. And then right afterwards I go, does this really help? I mean, I think it's the right thing to do. I feel good about doing it, but does it produce better content for me and for you guys and for the listeners? I don't know, but I do pray and I say, just help this to help somebody. I kind of change the language up every time, but anyway, so I prayed, but here goes nothing. Now, I know that the guests help, but what I am doing, does it actually help? I don't know. It's like that. What do the kids do now? 6 or 9? Is that what I'm doing that with my hands right now? I think it's 6 or 9, something like that. I don't even know what it means, but I've seen that going around. Is it 6 or 9? Is that what it is? I think that's what it is. Anyway. So, in this episode, we are heading back into the Sober Vault. This was originally episode number 195 of Sober Speak, and this is our friend, Mr. Charlie P. The episode is called So Our Troubles Are Basically of Our Own Making. And I was just getting a little emotional as I was putting this together, thinking about our dear friend. So many of us knew him. Some of you, this may be your first exposure to Mr. Charlie P. And he went on to the big meeting in the sky. I guess, gosh, was that a year and a half or 2 years ago now? It's been a while. And you could tell that his voice was going out by the time we were recording this. He was just, just a classic, just a icon in AA, and he is sorely missed. But I felt very fortunate that I was able to spend some time with him. We got several episodes. I would imagine, I don't know, 6 or 7 at least recorded. We were trying to get all the way through the steps, but he never made it to get through the rest of the steps, and so wish he had. But nonetheless, so this is just Charlie P. I'm not going to go through everything that he's covering here. I'll let you just listen, and we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy, Mr. Charlie P. And if this is your first time listening to Charlie P., you are in for a treat. God bless you. I'll talk to y'all again at the end of the episode. Okay, everybody. So we are back again with Mr. Charlie P. of Austin, Texas. Well, you know what? I'd tell you what, Charlie, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date, if you will, sir, and tell people where you are located in this great land of ours. I just started to say it, but I won't take that thunder away from you.
Well, thank you, John. I'm Charlie Kerr. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. I live in Austin, Texas, the capital city of the great state of Texas. And my home group, my sobriety date is March 22nd of 1985. And my home group is the primary purpose group of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're ever in, we meet at the Austin New Church on Tuesday nights at 7:30. If you're ever in Austin, we'd love to see you at 2701 South Lamar, 7:30 p.m. We have a line-by-line big book study meeting. It's been meeting for 15 years, and we just have a ball. And we'd love to see anybody come by, and a lot of people have, so it's a real gift.
And the other thing we talked about last time, I don't know if you're still having the Zoom meeting. Are you having that as well?
We do. We're Zooming on. We had all of a sudden we had like 600 people coming to our Zoom meeting. So when we went back live, we weren't just going to slam the door on it. So now we meet live at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. All my times are Central Time. On Zoom, and our Zoom number is 630-577-473. 630-577-473. And we have the same format on Zoom on Wednesday nights.
Is there a password?
No password.
Yeah, and we announced that last time you were on the program. Do you do you know if anybody joined from?
Yeah, we've had a few come on, and I'm going to confirm that meeting number.
Okay, you're looking it up there.
Right? Yeah, 630-577-473.
Yep, that's what I have too. I'm looking at it, and so I'll try to remember to put that in the show notes again. I know we did. So just so you all know, if you didn't hear Charlie's first episode, he was on episode number 176, and we titled that episode, "I Thought I Changed My Mind." And before we go into that, okay. So last time we were together, we talked about the physical allergy, the phenomenon of craving, and we mentioned that we were going to follow up with both the solution and the plan of action. So that's what we've gotten back together this time. But before we go into that, why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about the title of the last episode, and it was, "I Thought I Changed My Mind." What did you mean by that?
Well, thanks, John. And I just got to apologize again. When we did the last episode, I had an upcoming throat procedure, and I thought I was going to sound like Bing Crosby by the time we got to, for you kids, that was a singer back in the old days. Ask your parents about a Christmas album. But I thought I was going to be smoother by now, but it's still not the best. But We
Okay,
can
well,
get
hold on just a second before we go on to that topic of the episode title. I do want to cover your voice real quick and talk to people a little bit about what you had done, and you have some more procedures coming up this week. And why don't you go ahead and describe what's going on with your voice?
well, the good news is they're convinced it's not cancer. It's just I had some dysplasia on my vocal cords, and they went in and laser treated it 7 weeks ago. And last week I went in for a follow up, and it's still red, and there's a blister looking thing on it, probably from overuse. And so I'm about to do a 10-day cycle of steroids and a 5-day silence, and see if all the redness doesn't go away. And which would be great. If it'll respond to that, that beats the heck out of surgery because you only get so many surgeries on your vocal cords before you start losing voice. So, but a lot of people are dealing with a lot worse than I am. So I told the doctor, just keep me walking and talking, and we'll all be fine. If this is the worst we have to put up with, even this would be okay.
Well, I feel a little bit guilty here recording you. Did you say part of this is from overuse, and I'm sitting here recording you?
Hey, it's all good. I only have 3 talks scheduled for May, and two of them are today. It's the funniest thing. I have another talk at 9:30 tonight for the West Portland group. But no, I'm very excited to be here.
Okay.
I talk at work. I sell for a living. I sponsor about 26 guys, so and I live with Katie, so I get to do plenty. I do plenty of talking.
Speaking of Katie, I got to meet her right before we started today. And those who are familiar with Charlie P will know his lovely bride, Katie P. And we're going to have her on the podcast eventually. But we talked about this a little last time. You guys have been married for how long now, but known each other for, gosh, it seems like
We're
forever.
best friends for 20 years, and then her husband uh, passed away. He had a brain tumor. He wound up relapsing behind the medication, and he actually died of a drug overdose after being sober 23 years. It just rocked our recovery community. And then, not too long, well, a year or so after that, Katie caught me at a weak moment and made a pass at me, and 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 we've been a couple for 18 years. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, she's now. I'll warn you in advance. Brace yourself when she comes on. She's a little bit like getting a drink from a fire hose. You don't know.
That's all right.
It's a
I can
lot
handle
coming
it.
at you. A lot coming
W-
at you.
We'll look forward to it. All right. So let's go back to I want to do a couple things. Number one, I want to talk about the title of the last episode and what that meant.
Mhm.
And then also, as we were wrapping up the first episode that we recorded together, you mentioned you wanted to pick up next time we got together on a story regarding a pawn shop. So let's do it one at a time. First things, I thought I changed my mind. What did you mean by that?
Well, you know, one of the things we said last time is that the 3 things that made Alcoholics Anonymous a big deal when it all came together was an understanding of 3 things: an understanding of the problem with alcoholism, a solution for that problem. But even if I know what the problem is and I know the solution, it doesn't help me if I don't know how to make it take place. We have a program of action that will produce that solution. And that's what we talk about a lot. And the thing I talked about last week, and I really want to move into it again this week, is this problem of alcoholism and what it means, because I spent a great deal, I have spent some time in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, raising my hand and saying, "My name's Charlie, I'm alcoholic." And I didn't know what it meant. I mean, I figured if there was such a thing as an alcoholic, surely I must be one. But we didn't go into this thing we talked about last time about the physical allergy coupled with the mental obsession. It's so beautifully described in the doctor's opinion. And the first 20, at least 20, 44 pages of the book, but the first 23 pages talk about the physical aspect of alcoholism, this phenomenon of craving. And what I say a lot of times when I talk about it is that the tricky part about the phenomenon of craving is that I never thought I'd triggered a phenomenon of craving when I would start drinking. I just thought I changed my mind. Oh, sure, I said I was going to just have a couple, but I changed my mind. Um, two is a bad number. Maybe we'll have seven. Maybe. But looking back on it, anytime I would start drinking, I would trigger this phenomenon of craving, which caused a a compulsion to drink. When I start drinking, I'm all about drinking, and I can't control it on my own power. And it would be a beautiful. I mean, it's a big problem, but it's not my biggest problem, because if my biggest problem was what happens when I drink 4 ounces of vodka, my solution would be simple: just don't drink vodka. But that then is when it brings in the second piece of it, is that I don't get okay when I stop drinking. I get restless. I get irritable. I get discontented. People start to bug me. That sort of thing. And if you had 1,000-foot view of me, you'd be able to tell within a couple of days. Oh, he's about to twist off again. He's going to start a fight with his girlfriend. He's going to, he's going to get mad at work, and he'll be drinking in no time. And so what it happens is it brings me into this terrible cycle that the book talks about, where there's this circle where I drink and I trigger the phenomenon of craving. Now I'm drinking, and after a while it gets really bad, and I have to stop, or I get stopped. And then that's okay for a minute. In fact, it starts looking like maybe I was making too big of a deal out of this thing, and because what happens is I start getting uncomfortable, and I start getting restless and irritable and discontented, and I get so uncomfortable that it triggers this mental obsession to drink again. And it may not work well, but it worked once, and it worked in the past. And I always say, when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And and next thing you know, when I take that drink, it feels like it doesn't feel like the problem. It feels like the solution. And so what happens is I drink until I have to stop, and then I stop until I have to drink, and I drink until I have to stop, and then I stop until I have to drink. And if you're caught in that terrible cycle, there's a bottom below the bottom. I tell guys all the time, don't ever say it can't get any worse. That just shows a lack of imagination. But the thing we try, and I think, because you might look up in 3 years going, God, I wish I'd quit back then when everything was still pretty good, because now it's really bad. And so what happens is, when we get to about page 24 in the book, I've placed myself in a position where I've lost the power of choice and control. I can't choose whether I'm going to drink or not. And once I do start drinking, I can't control the amount I take. And the tricky thing is trying to do them both at the same time, trying to choose and control my drinking. I could either choose not to drink, but I wasn't enjoying it, or I could control my drinking and I wasn't enjoying it. So, and the story I like to tell about losing the power of choice and control was the pawn shop story. I grew up in Dallas, where you are now, and I just loved pawn shops. I grew to love them, I should say. I loved everything about them. I loved the purity of the equation. I never once walked in, because you just go into the pawn shop and you give them the shotgun and they give you the money. And you go back and you give them the deer rifle and they give them the money. Then you give them the sterling silver and I've never once had a pawnbroker go, good God, man, what are you going to do with this money? Or weren't you just here 2 hours ago? Or it's never like that. They just give you the money. And the thing was, I had a plan, and we alcoholics make some really good plans. I mean, we do. We're smart people. We make plans that you could take over to the university and show it to them, and they'd look it over and go, that's a pretty solid plan you got there, And my plan was that I had 90 days to get everything out of the pawn shop. You have a 90-day period where if you pay the interest and the principal, you could get it back. So I wasn't selling this stuff. I was just pawning it. And the plan was always, I'll come back when I'm flush and get it back. Well, now, part of the problem was, I may have mentioned last week, I was so poorly treated as a child that I ran away from home for good at the age of 28. Uh, my mother doesn't think that's funny, but I mean, and I'm serious, never went back, but so a lot of this was going on at that time. And the thing about this plan I had for the pawn shops, one complicating factor was that I didn't own very much stuff. So I was having to pawn stuff that didn't belong to me. And that puts a little more heat on the equation, but it's, yeah, I got a plan. And so, but one day I had pulled an insurance scam that I've since made amends for. And I had enough money to get everything out of the pawn shop. And it's go time. We need to go to the pawn shop and get all this stuff. But I used to drink at a little place in East Dallas called the Spillway Pub over by the Spillway on White Rock Lake. Well, I just loved the place. And it was the only place in Dallas that would let me run a tab. So it's also a very important piece of business to go by and settle my tab at the Spillway Pub, and because I'm going to need that, when the money's gone again. So, but we're not going to do anything stupid. We're not going to go crazy. We're certainly not going to trigger some kind of phenomenon of craving or anything like that, whatever that is. But the problem is, I'm a blackout drinker, and one of the few lines in the book that doesn't apply to me. I love our book, and it almost universally applies to me. But there's one line where it's on page 30, where it says, "Our stories are filled with countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like normal men." I don't have any experience with that. I never tried to drink like a normal man. I was about oblivion. I was a sloppy drinker. I went a year and a half without working there at the end, and I was about getting loaded from the very beginning. So I blacked out a lot, but I didn't have many of these. On this next thing I know, after going by to settle my tab at the Spillway Pub, I was upstairs at my parents' house, and I came out of a 5-day blackout. Now, I didn't have many of those. I had a lot of those blackouts where you don't remember the drive home, or you look out the curtains to see if the car's there, and wow, why are there weeds in my bumper, and that sort of thing. But this was 5 days of don't remember anything. And I came out and I'm sitting up and I can tell you what the entire room looked like. I could tell you the color of the carpet, the bedspread, the furniture, the wallpaper, the temperature of the room. Because when I came out of this blackout, I still had my jeans on. And in my right hand pocket, I had $8. And in my left front pocket, I still had all of those pawn tickets. And we've all had those mornings where you just go, oh no. Mm-hmm. Oh no. Because now I am out of plan. And I shot my wad on this other scam and I got nothing. And I'm not a sociopath. I worried about it for a minute, but I've looked at it a little. I'm not a sociopath, and I'm not going to sell my father's beloved shotgun for $40 if I can figure out any. So I would have to go to my father, who was a good man, and say, "Dad, listen, if we act now, I can get you a pretty good deal on all your stuff. But if we wait till tomorrow, it's strictly retail." And I always have to tell that kind of like it's a joke a little bit, because if I touch the desperation of that day, having to stand there and tell my father that I've pawned all this stuff and I got nothing. So we would have to get in his truck, and let me try a cough drop here. Dallas is a big spread out town like Los Angeles. It's not, so it wasn't just go to the pawn shop. It was, we have to go up on East Grand and get your shotgun. We go on Buckner Boulevard and get your deer rifle. And we got to go out to Oak Cliff and get your metal detectors. And then I left your sterling silver out on Beltline Road. So it was all day in the car with me and my dad and all that shame.
Mm.
And when we'd be driving around, I'd be going, Dad, I swear to God, I will never do this again. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want you to feel like this. I will never do this again. And if I was lying to that man, I damn sure didn't know it because it felt like I meant it with every fiber of my being. But the thing I didn't know, riding in his truck with him, was that I didn't have the power to make good on that choice, on that promise. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about powerless over alcohol, is I don't have the power to manage that decision to not drink. And once I start drinking, I can't manage it. My life has become unmanageable, and I'm powerless over alcohol because I would hit the back door of his house like a cat burglar within 3 to 5 days, and it'd just be like that. And we'd grab something, and off we'd go. And by the time I got to you people, my father and I had made the rounds of the pawn shops 3 times.
Mm.
That's how cool I was. That's how slick I was. I was a burden to anyone that was unfortunate enough to love me or be involved with me. That's the guy I brought to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I thought I had a little bitty problem. I figured AA probably had a little bitty answer. You know, that's if I've learned 2 things since I've got here, it's that one is I had a much bigger problem than I thought I had when I got here. And the other is that Alcoholics Anonymous had an enormous answer. And I didn't know that coming in. But so this powerless over alcohol, all of this, our book spends the first 44 pages. I mean, and the doctor's opinion, basically, almost half of our recovery text talking about the problem. This problem with alcohol, that I have a body that doesn't respond normal to alcohol, and I got a mind that's going to drive me back to it every time, every time, every time.
We will be continuing our conversation with Charlie P. from Austin, Texas in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web at soberspeak.com. There you can find approximately 195 or so other episodes you can listen to for free. You can also find the donate button on our website, which you can use if and only if the Spirit moves you to do such. Please keep in mind this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. All right, now back to Mr. Charlie P. All right, so we're talking about the problem. We're talking about the solution, the fact that you thought you had a little problem and AA had a little solution. So take me on from there. And the pawn shop story, by the way, was very, very telling, right, of where this kind of disease will take us. But go right ahead.
Well, it was absolute powerlessness, and so now the thing is, I think sometimes we have a tendency to rush somebody through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think the book talks about the ex-problem drinker who's found our solution, who's properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of a new man in a couple of hours, and that's, I think, a big piece of being properly armed with the facts about myself, is being able to explain to somebody that they don't just have a moral problem or a weakness, that this combination of physical allergy, mental obsession, mental blank spot makes me so powerless, and it drives me into a need for the solution, because down here at the bottom of page 24, it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And it goes on to talk about this. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching. the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires. But we saw that it really worked in others. That's one. And we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we've been living it. So my job is to give this guy a fatal dose of alcoholism, or what I call a step one experience. Well, because you see guys, I talk at treatment centers sometime, and when a guy has a step one experience, you can see them lean forward in their chairs, and it hits them like a ton of bricks, and they're going, hold on just a minute. I've been in and out of AA for 15 years, and I've never heard the stuff you're talking about, because for a whole bunch of problem drinkers, when we talk about going back to AA, or it's okay, I got to quit drinking and I got to go back to those meetings. And I have nothing. I love the meetings. I love the fellowship. But just going to AA meetings, if you have alcoholism the way we're describing it, will keep a guy like me sober right up to the point that I drink again.
Right.
And I can't figure out why. And when you got a guy that's coming in and you're saying, and he's thinking, what's going to be different this time? I'm going to try to get to that here in a minute. But the thing is, when we talk about this power greater than myself, the reason we have to pound this step one experience is I don't know why I would give a flip about a power greater than myself if I still think my power is going to get the job done. But the moment that I'm crushed by this fact that on my own, I got no shot, well, then this power gets real interesting, and it goes on later on to talk about it on page 20, same 25, it says, we believe if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, there's no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. We read that part of how it works in the meetings, and it says we stood at the turning point. We asked his protection. Well, but for years, I never asked myself what the turning point was. And it says it's right here on page 25. It says, one was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation. And there's people listening to this podcast that are trying to blot out an intolerable situation, and it says, and the other is to accept spiritual help. That's it. I stand it, but there's no flashing red light at the turning point, and it's like either keep going the way you're going, try not to think about it, and dying of alcoholism is a long, slow death. My buddy Bob D says it's like being kicked to death by rabbits. By the time you're dead, you wish you'd been dead a long time ago. But so then, it tells this wonderful story about Roland Hazard. But my favorite piece, and we switch over to the solution, is it says, we in our turn on 28. On 28, it says, we sought the same escape that Roland Hazard had found with the desperation of a drowning man. This gift of desperation comes from a clear understanding of how sunk I really am. That this is not something I'm going to think my way out of. I'm not fixing to get a handle on it. In Texas, we say fixing. It means preparing to. It doesn't mean repairing. It means preparing to. I'm not fixing to get a handle on it, and nobody can help me. And the thing I love about drowning men is they don't ask a lot of questions. If you spend the time pounding this problem, they get much more open-minded about the solution, which is this power greater than myself. Because until I've had the step one experience and that gift of desperation, I think I need for you to tell me what we're going to do, how's it going to go, what's it going to feel like when I'm doing it, what's the end result going to be. And I thought it was really important that I approve of the whole process, right? But when I've had that step one experience, all you're going to hear out of me is, and I can tell that John used to drink like I did and he's not drinking anymore. All you're going to hear out of me is, what do you want me to do? And then, Oh, that's funny. That makes me emotional because there's magic that takes place at that moment because the next thing you're going to hear out of him is, okay, I did that. Now what do you want me to do? And from there we roll. But otherwise, I have a guy that's thinking, maybe I got a problem. If my step one decision is just a mental exercise, then, sure, I'm alcoholic. Well, then my third step is going to be an academic exercise too. But when I have this desperation of a step one experience, it's going to it drives me into the rest of the work. One step calls for the next step, and the desperation calls for power, and the second step calls for the third step. And
So a couple things there, right? So
sure,
number one, when you were reading earlier, and I've always found it a little bit funny slash interesting slash ironic that you tell a new man that he or she is beyond human aid. It's like welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you're here. By the way, you're beyond human aid.
and we can't help you.
Yeah. And then the other piece is that I wanted to make that switch there. You talk about, you know, making that shift from the problem and not just realizing that this is, I mean, you need to understand the academic part of it and understand what alcoholism is and such, but, how do you get to that piece of actually turning your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand him? And that's what I think you wanted to shift into next, and what we would call the solution.
Well, and that's the other thing that amazes civilians is when you get to the line where it says whether to live life, to die an alcoholic death, or to live life on a spiritual basis are not always easy decisions to make. To normal people, they're like, that's a tough one for you.
Right.
Well, I mean, you're like going, go on to the bitter end, die an alcoholic death. Can you tell me a little bit more about that bitter end?
Right.
How long does it take? Do I get to drink between
Right.
now and the bitter end? That's
Is there a third option?
yeah. So we pound, and we wish we had a door number 3 because we know a lot of our members are not excited about the spiritual aspect of this program. But we were pretty excited when we found door number 2. Before all this came along, guys like me went to the nut house or the graveyard or both. And so when we what happened? So I'm going to skip way ahead because I don't even in workshops I don't have a tremendous amount of time to talk about uh, more about alcoholism. We agnostics. I think We Agnostics is one of the greatest pieces of spiritual literature ever written, and it deals a lot with my prejudices and the thing is that it uses language like we beg of you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. And I love to talk about it. Time restraints don't let us talk about it for time. But step 1 is this problem. Step 2 is the solution. But the thing is, there's a lot of examples in our book of people that had 2 of the 3 things together. They understood like Dr. Bob understood the solution. He even had the Oxford Group Program of Action, but he didn't understand the problem. It wasn't until Bill came to him, explained alcoholism the way Silkworth explained it to him, Bob sobered up never to drink again. Other people knew a little bit about the problem, like Carl Jung, talking to that certain American businessman. He says, you got the mind of a chronic alcoholic. You need these here and there, once in a while, amazing spiritual awakenings. I've seen. I got a great story to go with that, but I'm not going to tell it tonight. But I mean, he's got going, you need one of those. We got no flipping idea how to make it happen. But that's the only thing that's going to fix you. The big thing we have is we have a program of action that will bring about that solution that I've admitted in step 2. The only thing that will help me is a spiritual experience. And then our 12th step, it says, having had a spiritual awakening. And how did it happen? As the result of these steps. So it's saying the only thing that will help me is available to us as a result of these steps. And by now that we've spent about an hour and a half on step 1, that solution is really interesting. Well, the thing I want to talk about in the 2 hours we have left today, um,
And by the
is
way, Charlie, don't worry about the time because we can always schedule some more time to come back around and talk about
I
whatever you need to talk, as long as your voice is going to be okay in a couple months.
I love being here, and if it helps anybody, oh, I'm sorry, I bumped the mic. If it helps anybody, it's certainly worth the effort because we act like sometimes that everybody out there drinking knows this stuff, that they know about alcoholism, that they know what AA does, and we don't. In fact, one of my favorite exercises, I've done it in rooms with 6,000 people in it, is when you say, think about when you would swear you were never going to drink again to your people or whatever. And then they look up and you're drinking. And they'd always ask that question. They go, John, why did you start drinking again? And we give them the only answer we've got, which is what?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. God, it's like I did it. I've done it in big rooms, and it's like a chorus. And we go, I don't know. I mean, it's just what I do. And I hurt the people that love me. I make promises I don't keep. And by the time I get here, I think, disease my left foot. There's something really bad wrong with me. And to find out that this is a problem and to have a solution for it is an amazing message to be able to carry. But when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, we made a big mistake. And I had a sponsor I'll love for the rest of my life, but we basically said, are you alcoholic? And I thought, well, yeah, sure, I must be. I didn't know anybody that drank more than I did. And I've met a few since then. We got some impressive stories in AA. But and then we had to dance around the higher power issue. And once we got okay with the higher power issue, we got down on our knees and did the third step prayer and started writing inventory. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes being made in Alcoholics Anonymous, assuming that there are any mistakes being made in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because what happened was we went right from, are you alcoholic? Do you believe in God? To get down on your knees and do the third step prayer. And for a whole bunch of our membership, the whole third step is the third step prayer. I've done workshops. I was out in Utah. I'm going to burn up some time here, but
You're good.
but I was out in Utah one time doing a workshop, and it was a men's retreat, and I had a sponsee with me, and we're talking, and Katie's name comes up, and the guy that recorded it comes from behind his table. There's a group of us sitting there between sessions, and he points at me, and he says, this guy's wife did a 1-hour talk on step 3 and never even got to the third step prayer. And I remember thinking, we do that all the time. But if your total understand, that's remarkable. If your total understanding of the third step is you do the third step prayer. But so that was my experience for about 17 years. I had my biggest spiritual awakening at 17 years of sobriety. I'm sober 36 years now. But at 17 years, my man named Mark Houston walked into my life. And if you don't hear me say anything else, hear me say, get a hold of some Mark Houston recordings and study them, listen to them, take notes, pause them. He changed my life and the lives of many people, and the message we're still trying to carry. But when I say we made a mistake, skip it. What happens when you do that, when you go right from do you believe in God to the third step prayer, you skip this body of work that takes place in pages 60 to 63. And it's really not very important. It's just the root of my problem and the basis of my recovery for the rest of my life. Other than that, just skip it,
Yeah, not important.
and let us know how it's going. And that's why we're blowing up marriages and we're, blowing up jobs and can't figure out why I want to kill myself at 8 years sober and those sorts of things. And to be able to tell that guy there's more available, and a lot of it takes place in these pages and what comes from them. So in the time we have, I want to go to page 60. And after that A, B, and C that we read, it says, being convinced. You know what the next line after A, B, and C? That part up to A, B, and C. A, that we're alcoholic, could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. And that's the end of that part of how it works that we read at the start of, I call it the most often read, least listened to portion of the big book, because most of us zone out about the time they say,
Right.
rarely have we seen a person fail. come back into the room by the time they go, B, that probably know him. So the next line after that says being convinced. We were at step 3. Being convinced of what? A, B, and C. So if being convinced, that tells me that A, B, and C do a pretty good job of summing up 1 and 2. But when we roll into step 3, it says that we decided to turn, like you talked about earlier, we're going to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand Him. Now, if I'm working with a guy and I tell him, okay, Bob, we need you to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. I love taking the big book and turning statements into questions. And there's sometimes where I go, all right, here I go, this would be a very fair question for this guy to ask. He's desperate. He knows he's sunk. And I say, I want you to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. I think it would be a fair question for him to go, but just what do you mean by that? And just what do we do? And, and from there, it spends the next 2 pages talking about what we mean. And then it switches to what we do. Now, here's the piece that I missed for 17 years. It says the first requirement is that, and I go first person in this paragraph. It says the first requirement is that Charlie be convinced that that Charlie's life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And above convinced, I've written, are you convinced? Now, the thing is, at 17 years sober, that line leapt off the page at me. And not only was I not convinced of that concept, that line had never touched me, because we went right from God could and would if you ever saw it to the 3rd step prayer. So I'm out there working a program like the problem is alcohol. And now, believe me, that not drinking is a big piece of what we do. But all of a sudden, it says I got to be convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be. And it says on that basis. Now, Bill uses that term basis a lot. Basis, basic, basically. He uses that a lot. And when I looked it up in our old dictionary, like we use in our meeting, it says the underlying principle of something or the foundation of something is its basis. And when the basis of my life is I'm running this deal, it says I'm almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. When I'm sitting with a guy, I take about an hour and 15 minutes to do these next 2 pages, but I'm going to try to do it real fast because it goes on to say, even though our motives are good, so I can't even trust my motives. I'm always getting in jackpots, and it seems like my motives are good, right? But so, and then it goes on to say, most people try to live by self. We're like an actor. Anybody ever read this thing about the actor and get nothing out of it? You're like, what? Well, it turns out this actor wants to run the whole show, but what I didn't know for a long time is that the reason he's such a pain in the neck is because he's not the director. He's just an actor, right? He's supposed to stand on the X and say his lines, but he's got an opinion about everything. Well, now we're starting to sound like me a little bit. I walk in a grocery store and I got opinions. I like to form really strong opinions based on a limited perspective. you know, you know, why do they have the bean dip over here and the potato chips are over there and all that but then there comes this delusion that if only my arrangements would stay put, if only people would do as I wish, the show would be great. How can that be selfish, John? I mean, I'm trying to create Charlie-topia, but you're invited, and it's going to be great for everybody. And it says life would be wonderful. And in trying to make these arrangements, this is what I call the toolkit of self-will. Sometimes
the toolkit of what?
Self-will.
Okay.
It says when I'm trying to get things to go my way, sometimes I'm kind, considerate, even modest and self-sacrificing, right? In trying to get you to do what I want you to do. Unless what? Unless that ain't working. It says, on the other hand, I might be mean, egotistical, selfish, dishonest, but usually I have mixed traits. This is what usually happens. I mean, anybody, I'm like a halfback juking in the open field. I'm nice to this guy. I'm mean if that doesn't work, but I'm always trying, and it's just what usually happens. The show didn't come off very well. Now, see if this sounds familiar. I began to think life doesn't treat me right. Anybody in the last 2 weeks feel like life hadn't treated you right? You know? And it says, but do I have decide, no, this is a faulty premise? No. I pull back for a minute and I decide to exert myself more. And I drive in, I become on the next occasion more demanding or more gracious. Still, the play doesn't suit me. Admitting I might be somewhat at fault, maybe this much, I'm sure others are more to blame. This is where half of my 10th steps responses could start. Let me guess, the show didn't come off very well. You're feeling like life didn't treat you right. And so it says, I become angry, indignant, self-pity. And this is not angry this week, indignant next week, self-pity. It's like boom, boom, boom. Can't believe they're doing this. Indignant. After everything I've done for these knuckleheads, this is the way they're going to treat me. And then finally, what's the use? Self-pity, what's the use? I can't work with these people. I'm just, and I go, what is my basic trouble? There's that word basic again. What is the underlying problem? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? And am I not a victim tricked by this delusion, this lie that I'm telling myself that I can seize satisfaction and happiness from this life if I just manage well? I mean, at 17 years sober, I'm managing my tail off and everything is blowing up in my face. And I can't figure out why. And it says, what about the play? It says, and do not his acts, isn't it evident to the rest of the players what he's trying to do? And don't my actions make them want to retaliate? If I see you trying to hog the spotlight, I'm going to be trying to get up front too. And we got chaos on our hands, right? Because anybody could see I'm a producer of confusion rather than harmony. And it goes on to say that I'm selfish, self-centered, egocentric. And when you go to the next page, okay, it says, it switches here, and it says selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our problem. What? I thought this was Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought vodka was the root of my problem. And it says driven by 100. Now remember, it said, what do we mean and what do we do? It's still talking about what we mean here. And it says driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. I step on people's toes. They retaliate, seemingly without provocation, right? I didn't do nothing. They just went up, and it says we invariably find at some point in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in them. And here's one of the biggest promises in the big book. It says, so our troubles, we think, are basically, there's that term basic again, are basically of our own making. And why is that a promise? Because if my problems are of everybody else's making, the only way I'm ever going to be okay is if I can get everybody else to act right. And I have very little experience getting everybody to act right. But if it's my own making, me and this power and a new attitude have a chance. And it says, I'm going to close with this next little paragraph. It says, they arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Now, I never thought I was an extreme example of self-will run riot. And it's that the next line is a drunk trap. It says, though he usually doesn't think so. I tell this story, but if you went out in the United States and you got all the people and you picked out the people that were self-will run riot, right? And you built this 20-foot high chain link fence with guard towers and razor ribbon, and you herd all the people in the country that are self-will run riot into that fenced-in area. All right, are you getting an image of that community?
I do, yes.
Now we're going to go into that community, and we're going to pluck out the extreme examples of self-will run riot. These are the ones driving the other self-will run riot people crazy, right? So we pluck out all those extreme examples, and put them in a room, guess what we got? Welcome to Alcoholics
Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
But the problem is, I don't even think I belong in the fence, right? Because I got motives and I got my story and I got, what I was trying to do. And so I think when you come to pluck me out, I don't think I'm an extreme example. I think, oh, they heard my story and they see their mistake now. I don't, they're going to put me back in Gen Pop. No, I'm, so and it goes on. But now here's where it gets heavy. It says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. And I like to look a guy right in the eye and go, what do the words above everything mean to you? I mean, paramount importance. It doesn't even say above everything, we got to stop drinking vodka. It says above everything, we got to get rid of this selfishness. And we must, or it kills us. But God makes that possible because the thing is, I can't just listen to this talk and go, that knucklehead from Texas is right. I'm going to start being less selfish. It's in my DNA. I can't just do it on my own power. It's just God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions, Lord, but we couldn't live up to them. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. So I spent a long time, and I'm going to tie it up with this. I spent a long time in AA focusing on the wrong problem. It turns out alcohol never was my problem. Alcohol was the only thing I'd ever found that would ease the discomfort of a life based on selfishness and self-centeredness. And I'd worked my whole program like the problem was alcohol. Chuck Chamberlain gave a talk called New Pair of Glasses, and they put it into a book. And one of the things, he told a story there about a guy coincidentally named Tex. And Tex had been afraid of dogs his whole life. And one day doing inventory, he realized that when he was a kid, he had been bit by a dog. But when he looked at it further, he realized that he'd been chasing this little neighborhood girl across her yard when her dog came out and bit him. And he said, all my life, I'd been running from dogs and chasing women, and dogs never were my problem. And it's the same way for me. I'd been working a program like the problem was alcohol, and it really wasn't. The problem was that I was so self-centered that I created this mental obsession, this discomfort. Now my sobriety picture gets much bigger. Now it's not just drink, don't drink. Now it's how does self show up? How does it manifest? What's it like to be me? What's it like to be around me? What's it like to date me, work for me, be parented by me? And it changes the whole picture. And right there is where it switches over to this is the how and why of it. I think we're going to have to do it on another podcast.
We're going to have to get back together again, Charlie, and I will look forward to that. And who knows, we may do 2 or 3 more. I don't know. Neither of us are going anywhere. You have to preserve your voice for tonight, talking to the Pacific Northwest. We want them to get a good Charlie P. And then you're going to have your surgery. How long will you said you're going to have 5 days of silence for a while.
10 days.
10 days.
Steroids.
10 days of steroids and 5 days of silence, though, right?
I really don't look forward to that because I do not sleep when I take those steroids. And then 5 days of not saying anything, which might be recommended when you haven't been sleeping. Keep your mouth shut,
Well, listen, we'll end it up now, and then I will get back with you. Maybe we can even do it after we stop recording here. But as you know,
well, let's just make a note that we covered what we mean, and we're going to start up next time. This is the how and why of it.
We're going to start it with the how and why of it.
We're going to switch over to what we do, and then we can roll from there.
So we're going to cover the how and why of it, and then what was the next part?
I said we'll be able to roll from there.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
Um, so we're doing some planning on the podcast here while folks are listening to us, and I absolutely love that. I think that's the best way to do it.
That's a lead in.
Yeah, so I will definitely get back with you. Let me go ahead and read page 164 here to close us out. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And this is the type of podcast that I would recommend that people go back, the type of episode, I should say, that I recommend people go back and listen to again, pause it, back it up, take notes on it. As you saw me earlier, Charlie, I've been taking notes like left and right as you're talking, and I'm going to go back and review my notes. And then always, it's always interesting. What you don't know is that I have to go back and pick out, just like 20 seconds of something that you may have talked about during the episode and put it on the beginning. And I have so many choices here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. So, anyway, God bless you, my friend. Good luck with your treatment coming up, and we will get together and record some again soon, okay?
And you as well, John. Thank you for all you do.
God bless.
God bless.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was the one and only Mr. Charlie P. So dearly, dearly missed. As I said on the front end of this episode, if this was your first time listening to him, you may want to go back through our various episodes and do a search for Charlie P. He's in there. I think I said 6 or 7 times on the front of this. It could be 7 or 8. I don't know, but he's in there a bunch of times. And you'll want to gobble up everything that he has to talk to. It's almost like how he talked about gobbling up everything that Mark Houston used to put out. And like I said, Charlie is dearly missed. He's an icon. I still stay in touch with Katie P., his wife, and I'm trying to get her back on to record some additional episodes at some time. If you need to reach out to me, or I don't need, but if you want to reach out to me, I'm at John, JOHN at soberspeak.com. If you want to reach out to our P.O. box and you cannot email, you can do that too. We have the wonderful Mr. Mike who monitors that P.O. box. It's Sober Speak at 1962 East Apache Boulevard, P.O. Box 7925 in Tempe, Arizona, 85281. And you can get in touch with him there if you would like to write in a physical letter for whatever reason. And he also monitors a lot of our inmates that write in via JPay and some other forms of email communication they use. And I'm just so grateful for Mike that he has taken that on and done, gosh, just a wonderful job and a lot of good with that. Anyway, excuse me. Now I'm for a little bit of listener feedback. D writes in, and D says, "Hi, John. My name is Deenum S, but my friends call me D." Well, hopefully it's okay that I call you D. D. She said, "I found your podcast a few years back and I quite enjoy it. As you say, it's a meeting between meetings. I've been sober for 3 years now, but I've been absent from meetings, but did the work with my sponsor. Unfortunately, my sponsor went back out and we were almost done booking, so I've been out. I'm just getting back into the fellowship and trusting in God's will. I do enjoy listening to Chris S. and Mark W. I think that's their name, but I love them. But overall, I just love listening to your podcast. God bless you." Well, thank you, D. Glad you're getting back up in that saddle and excuse me, writing in again. And thanks for reaching out. I sure do appreciate that. And I pass that on to Chris S. Now, Mark W., I think that could be, I'm not sure who that is. Did I pass it on? No. Oh, maybe you're talking about Mark H, like Mark Houston. I don't know. But nonetheless, thank you for writing in, D. I'm so sorry if after 440 episodes, I think kind of start running in together. Corey writes in, and Corey says, I'm looking to get in touch with Jack W. from the September 2021 episode. Corey says, I was looking to get in touch with Jack W. from Friday, the September 17th, 2021. I was wondering if you might have his contact information. I just heard his share, and it's almost identical to my story, and I'm currently looking for sponsorship. Thanks for all your help, Corey B. Well, as you know, Corey B., I responded to that email and got you in touch there with Mr. Jack W. All right, now, here is a letter that was written in. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through this. It's 5 pages. Just want to let everybody know. And it is a handwritten letter that was written into the aforementioned, I just love saying that word, to the aforementioned Mike, who monitors our P.O. box. And Mark says, Dear John, hello. I hope that this letter finds you well. My name is Mark K, and I am an alcoholic. I am 54 years old from Winter Haven, which is located in Central Florida. I am currently incarcerated at Tomaka Work Camp located near Daytona Beach, Florida. I am incarcerated again due to my alcoholism. I really enjoyed the Sober Speak podcast. I am sure I speak for many others who are incarcerated when I say this is a godsend. Oh, God bless you. For many inside, it is as close as we can get to a meeting. Many episodes on Sober Speak bring me to tears. I hope that I hear the hope that I hear and feel are awesome. I came from a family of alcoholics, and I am the youngest of 7. My mother, I am the youngest of 7. My mother, all but my mother and I were not alcoholics. My father and 5 other siblings are. I have been at war with myself for most of my life. As a Jesuit, I think a Jesuit, I have lost and wasted many years of my life. I am not exactly new to the AA program, but I have almost worked the steps. This is because I have never totally surrendered my life to God as I have recently. Good for you, Mark. I know that the AA program is the way to freedom. It's just something I know. I've been listening to people that have been when I am now where I have been now, but I have found hope where there seemed to be none. I finally ended. I really enjoyed episodes 364 and 365 with Ron B. of Riverview, Florida. I could relate to his story about basically everything with himself, and that if he didn't make changes while in prison, he no doubt would drink again when he came back out. I can relate to his story that there has been times that I was no doubt about God protecting me. I will be released next year, and I don't want to leave the same as I came in. Change starts now. I know that the AA program is the answer and the way for freedom and bondage of self and alcoholism. John, I am feeling in need of help. I know that there are, I know that there comes a time here in AA where we must listen to someone when we realize that have no clue that we have no clue in someday. I was wondering and hoping that you might know someone in Central Florida area that might want to sponsor or correspond with me. Would you be willing to connect me with Securus or JPay app? And if so, it would be really cool to share about the podcast. I heard you maybe on the podcast something is talking about Securus and JPay, and I connected with all of the guys on the website and used my name, Mark K, and his number, and it will instruct you on how to connect with me. My snail mail address is such and such. John, I would really gratefully appreciate it. All correspondence. I know that help is going to come through hearing and listening to others through the AA program. Would it be possible to pass off my information to Ron B? I believe him and I could really relate. Also, we're almost done here. Where I also tried to add you always to add that you always sound really joyful on the podcast. Well, I'm not always joyful, my friend, but thank you. You sound at peace with yourself and with those around you. Isn't that what we all want? Peace. It is. May God bless you and all you do. Sincerely, Mark K. Looking forward to your response. So I took that letter that Mike had provided to me, and I forwarded it on to Ron B. And I know that Mike, who monitors this PO box, is also communicating with him. But if you're in Central Florida and you want to communicate with Mark as well, just send me an email to John, JOHN at soberspeak.com, and we will get you. I didn't read Mark's last name and some other identifying information on there, but I'm happy to provide that to somebody who wants to write in. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for your kind words. God bless you, and may God bless you and keep you until then. And I'm glad you're getting ahead of the game and preparing. Tim writes in, and Tim says, "Hey, John, it's been a while since I've touched base. I caught up on all the episodes a while back, and now I'm just hearing in the car weekly that I haven't." Man, I'm really having a hard time. I caught up on all this episodes a while back, and now just hearing in the car weekly, I haven't thought about writing except for when I'm driving, and that's probably not the best time to type. That's right, Tim. Just wanted to let you know that you and one other recovery podcast are my two go-tos every week. There are others I catch on my drive, but in my never to be humble opinion, you and Sober Not Mature far exceed the rest. Yeah, I've actually been on with those guys in the past. Just wanted to let you know I'm still here, still sober, and still listening. Tim McBee, SOPO, Maine. Now, is SOPO sober? Is that a city? No, it doesn't look like it because it's capitalized. So I'm assuming SOPO is like an acronym for something, but my apologies. Tim McBee in Maine. Thank you so much for writing in, sir. Beth writes in, and Tim says, "Hi, John M. I live in Seaside, California for 7 years now. I grew up in Nebraska. I'm a musician singing and teaching piano and voice. I'm an alcoholic, a sobriety date of July 18th, 2023. My recovery has been of the garden variety type, and I've had a lot of support from from people in the program. I do service. I'm a secretary and host once a week, and I attend meetings on on Zoom at, quote, the Promises Group out of Palm Springs, California. I have a wonderful sponsor, Vernita. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this program has saved my life. I have a nightly routine while I brush my teeth, wash my face, and I listen to your podcast. Well, hopefully you're listening to this while you're brushing your teeth and washing your face. And I love to hear what people are doing when they're listening to this. I don't think I've ever heard that one before. That's fantastic. She said, I found this podcast through a friend who had it playing in her car one day. Well, you must hang out with some very bright people there. And I asked her what it was called. She said, and that was about a year ago. I started my very first podcast session and I got addicted to it very quickly. I'm all caught up on the episodes. And of course, at this point, I always look forward to a new episode. I'm not so great with retaining names, but there was a speaker there that had a really good information on steps. I think his name might have been Chris. That's probably Chris S, but it could be Chris M. But Chris S he's talked about the steps a lot on this podcast. But it's really hard to choose between them because they're all so great. I would agree. And they all kind of resonate with different people. She says, honestly, I could go back to one episode and listen to all of them and probably benefit in different ways now that I'm further in my recovery. That's a good point. I've had people write in before say that they take an episode, they have their small group listen to it, then they get together and they talk about the episode during their small group and what they heard. And it's just like the big book too. Depending on where I am, the episodes and reading the big book and whatever I'm listening to, I get a different kind of lesson at it at the time. But anyway, she says you're further into my recovery, your podcast and what you do has gotten me through a lot of rough times. I can't thank you enough for what you do. Thank you. My brother lives in Dallas, Texas, and he actually just had his first child, which makes me an aunt to my niece named Maisie. Oh, Maisie, that's the name of our puppy here at home, our dog. And, that's really cool. Maybe you could, anyway, she says, I'm actually going to Dallas to see her for the first time. Maybe you could bring Maisie over to meet Maisie. But anyway, she says, I'm not sure how far away my brother lives from the Frisco group, but I want to check it out nonetheless. She says, I want to get the vibe of AA in Texas because I've considered moving there since my brother is there. I hope you have a good evening, Beth J. Well, Beth J., when you come on down, let me know, and we'll get you hooked up with all the various meetings here in this area. I'd be glad to be a guide for you, but thanks for writing in, and congratulations on the birth of your niece, Maisie. Love to hear it. Finally, Richard writes in. He says, hi, John. My sobriety date is 1/25/2024. I live in Draper, Utah. My home group is the Early Beginnings group in Salt Lake City. We meet every day of the week at 6:30 a.m. Well, that is an early beginning there, Mr. Richard. I'm the Grapevine rep for the group and also the GVR, Grapevine rep in our district. Is that what the GVR is? Anyway, also the GVR in our district. He says, I found Sober Speak on iHeartRadio after searching for sobriety podcasts. I started listening to the podcast of the week then and went back to the beginning. And now I'm on episode 188. Oh, you know what? That's interesting. You are probably about to come up on the episode that I just played, which was originally episode number 195, but we went back into the vault for a greatest hits episode. He says, the first time I emailed you was in December 2025, and at that time, my favorite speakers were Doug S., Purple Kush, and several from Brenda J. I remember that. I also shared that I had previously had 32 years of sobriety, stopped going to meetings, and relapsed on medical marijuana. Since finding your podcast, I listen to it at work every day, and your guests are I always get something out of each episode. Thank you for the service you do and for every week to make it possible for all of us here to hear the various speakers you bring on the podcast. I'm sure it's a lot of work each week. Thank you for your sacrifice. A grateful alcoholic, Rich. Thank you, Rich. Listen, I wasn't going to mention this, but I just reading that at the last second, it made me think of is that, up to this point, folks, I have never. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm considering bringing on some sponsors. And the reason I want the sponsors, which I have never done before at all through 400, what is this, episode 440? Through 440 episodes is because I want back some time, okay? And the reason the sponsors help is because I would be able to use some of that cash or fees or whatever you want to call it to pay people to help me produce this thing, because it does take a bit of time to put all this together, right? Now, it's a labor of love, and I love, talking to you guys and being with you guys, and but it's the production. This part is the easy part, right? Reading what you guys have to do, interviewing. It's the other part which you don't see in the background with the editing, the leveling out the audio, there's a lot of publishing the audio, putting it out and all this kind of stuff. And I won't bore you with all that. Okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it can be a bit cumbersome. In fact, if you're out there and you are, something about podcasting, how to do these things, and you want to help, just let me know. But anyway, I've been down this road before. It's a little bit tricky because of how I produce it. I won't bore you with all that. Anyway, that just came out. Okay, I wasn't planning to talk about that, but I am, looking at some things in the background to see if, once again, I can get back some time in my life. So that's it. All right. Keep coming back, everybody. It works if you work it. If you made it through this far, God bless you. You're still listening to me. God bless you. You can't see me, but I'm doing namaste hands right there. You are a trooper. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back next week. You never can tell what may or may not happen. And may God bless you and keep you until then. As I always say, I know you guys have so many choices of what you could do with your time. The fact that you come in here to listen to me whatsoever is, it just blows my mind. Love you. Hope to be back next week. And if so, have a good rest of your week. God bless.